yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, always by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, love all the broadcasting gigs that I have, including calling games for CBS. Just got back to my house in Pennsylvania. It's funny because I recorded the Ross Tucker football podcast from my hotel in Arizona like 7 hours ago. And now I'm recording the College Draft Podcast with my brother from another mother, Emory Hunt, from my home in Pennsylvania. So yes, I took the red-eye flight in between, just walked in the door because I love getting a chance to talk about college football with my guy, Emory Hunt. Here's what we do. Every week, we usually make some picks against the spread in college football. We talk about some top prospects and talk about college football in general. I'm a huge fan, love the product, love talking about it. When I talk about Emory, most of you know this, but we get new listeners or new people watching on YouTube every week. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I'm talking about former Ragin' Cajun running back Emory Hunt. You need to check him out on social media at FBall Game Plan on Twitter. He's Football Game Plan on YouTube. And Emory, this is one of the biggest weeks we'll have all year. I mean, number one, I want to pick your brain a little bit on the Army-Navy game, on the Heisman, and on what I think is a major, major concern, maybe the biggest concern that there is right now in college football, which is saying a lot. But something happened last night that just crystallized it for me that it's not okay right now. We'll get into that. And then we got the college football playoff starts next weekend. 1 game Friday night in Notre Dame, Indiana, 3 on Saturday. Got all kinds of bowl games this week. Should be fantastic. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL, us out at Ross Tucker Pod. Greatly appreciate those of you that rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. That helps quite a bit. Never too early. In fact, now is actually probably the perfect time. I think it's a really cool Christmas gift for a buddy of yours, right? Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. Absolutely love it as a gift for someone for the holidays. Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. Emory, we had points in the Army-Navy game. The over hit. There was more action. As it's funny, it's like at the same year, neither team really runs a whole lot of triple option anymore.
Right, and it's funny because Army looked like Navy and Navy looked like Army in that ball game. Army looked like they hadn't worked on offense all season, and Navy looked like a finely tuned machine. Love the Drew. It was funny because Drew Cronick, the OC for Navy, dialed up a perfect game plan against Army, while his former team that he was a head coach of, Mercer, was going toe-to-toe with North Dakota State in the FCS playoffs, running some cool plays as well. So shout out to Drew Cronick, and he really took it to Army in that ball game. Army couldn't do – I don't know why Army was married to the quarterback run game. It wasn't working. Get away from it. And Navy had all kind of different things dialed up. They got everybody the ball. Everybody got a cookie, and that's how they were able to come away victorious.
Boy, there's a lot of interesting things there. I think it's really a disadvantage for whichever team, and this could happen moving forward, whichever team plays in the conference championship game the week before. It's such a big game. Like the crescendo to it is such a big deal that having to play the week before against a good Tulane team, you're playing for a championship, whereas that entire week the Army's getting ready for Tulane, Navy's getting ready for Army.
Right.
And Army's kind of already had a great season. Army's already won a championship, all those things. Whereas Navy, like, that was the make or break for their season to win the Commanders in Chief trophy. It's funny, when's the last time Army and Navy both won championships? And that's exactly what happened. The Army won the AAC championship, but Navy won the Commander in Chief trophy, the CIC trophy. The truth is, having been around those programs a lot, they value the CIC much higher than they would ever value the AAC. It's not even close, Emory.
And then there was some added seasoning on top for Coach Monken's comments saying that do they still play football down there at Navy? Of course that was added to the fire, and Navy went out there with a little bit more oomph in their game.
Well, what's so funny about that, too, he was obviously joking, right? Like, right. It was a joke. Like, they still play football down there? Like,
that's something I would always say. No matter what school, it could be USC, it could be like, man, y'all got a football team? Like, I always did. That's a classic joke.
Well, and what's funny to me about that is Navy took it real seriously. Like, Navy took it real personally, real seriously, even though he was clear as day joking. But right. I guess that's smart by Newberry. Smart by their head. For 2 weeks, they were getting fed up about that. The real problem for Army is Navy's best players are all juniors. Horvath, the quarterback, Teska, the fullback, Heidenreich, the wingback. You heard it here first. Would not be surprised, Emory, even a little bit, if Blake Horvath gets invited to New York next year. I mean, if Bryson Daly can finish 6th this year, Horvath is fast. Horvath can do it with his arm. They get a lot of guys coming back. I would not be surprised at all if Horvath finds a way to make it to New York next year.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Heidenreich got drafted next year, because he is super good. Like, he is versatile and really good, and I could see that happening as well.
Well, depends on whether or not Belichick is back in the NFL by then or not. Because if Belichick's back in the NFL by then, he's 1,000% taking Eli Heidenreich. There's no question. Speaking of the Heisman, I don't really know what to say other than the right guy won. It's absolutely absurd what Travis Hunter did on both sides of the ball. We've never seen it before. I don't know if we'll ever see it again. It would have really bothered me if he didn't win it. I will say 2 things about that. It's really cool that I got a chance to call a game on TV for a Heisman Trophy winner. That's never happened before, number one. By the way, in that game, that was like the 3rd game of the year. I was saying, how is he not the Heisman? It was the 3rd game of the year against Colorado State. And I'm like, this guy just had a pick and 2 what are we even doing here? He's the best player. I will say on the flip side, really kind of felt bad for Genty, because I feel like there's a lot of years, even recent years, where I would have picked him over the guy that won it, but you can't pick Genty over Travis Hunter, was my thought.
Well, you can't, and there's a lot at play, a lot of factors at play, because I felt like Genty was made out to be. It wasn't about Genty. It was about the hate for Coach Prime and Coach Deion Sanders, right? More so than the love for Genty, because we've seen this before, Ross. We saw Troy Davis put back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons, and the highest he finished in the Heisman Trophy was like 5th. And then we saw, other 2,000-yard backs. Like, obviously, we saw Marcus Allen win it. We saw Barry Sanders win it. The reason why those 3 that I mentioned kept being brought up, not even Troy Davis was brought up. He rushed for 2,000 yards back-to-back seasons. But Allen and Sanders and Davis did it in 11 games. And more recently, we saw Melvin Gordon do it, and I think the highest he finished was 4th in the Heisman. He ran for 2,500 yards in the Big Ten. And he had a 400-yard game in the snow that we remember. I think what hurt Genty is that Genty didn't have any memorable runs or any memorable games that you could point to and be like, man, everything Barry Sanders did was memorable, right? Because of how he ran. His play style was memorable. Even for Larry Johnson, who ran for 2,000 yards, return kickoffs, and had some cool kickoff returns in the midst of his 2,000-yard season. But for Genty, all we kind of remember is him just plowing through defenders and getting, some carries in games and racking up yards, which is in and of itself impressive. But the knock Travis Hunter, and it was sad to see it from former football players to dismiss what Travis Hunter was doing. Like, bro, we know how hard it is to start and excel on one side of the ball. The top cornerback won the Bolitnikov. That should have shut it down automatically. Like, the best cornerback won the top receiver award. And if you say, well, he didn't lead him, you watch Travis Hunter in crucial moments snag some of the most impressive passes thrown by Shedeur Sanders in tight moments. The North Dakota State game, you could pick out these awesome plays, and those things are the Heisman moments that stick in your mind. Let alone the interceptions, the one against UCF. So for Genty, it was just unfortunate because he had a great season. 2,000 yards is nothing to sneeze at, but he didn't break a record. Hell, Jonathan Taylor almost did it 3 years in a row. Had 19 plus as a true freshman and back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons, and he wasn't even in the top 4 in Heisman Trophy voting. So it's not like we hadn't seen 2,000 yards. We saw Genty do it at a great rate, consistency. He was healthy the whole season. But, man, it's hard to ignore someone excelling at two of the hardest positions in football outside of quarterback and offensive line. Like, cornerback is tough, and he's excelling there. Travis Hunter was clearly your most outstanding player.
Yeah, and the fact that all 4 of them, and Hunter's a little bit different because he went to Jackson State, but the fact that the other 3 guys legitimately started at non-Power 4 schools is really impressive, right? Genty started and finished. Cam Ward, never heard of him until Emory Hunt 4 years ago told me about him at Incarnate Word on this show. Think about that. I mean, you knew about Cam Ward before anybody else. I love it. That's what you do. And Dylan Gabriel, I did his game in 2019 against East Carolina. 2019, he was throwing the ball to Gabe Davis. All right, so let's move on to this week. I'm going to start with the college football playoff games, and then we can kind of circle back and maybe get to some of these other bowl games this week. But let's start with Friday night, and I should mention 2 things. One is Emory's picks are presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. And I will be Friday night. I should be actually, I think I'm going to be in Indianapolis. I'm not sure, 100% sure, but I think I'm going to be in Indianapolis, which would be amazing for Indiana and Notre Dame. I can be drinking some Labatt Blue Lights with Hoosier fans and Irish fans watching the Indiana game of the millennium, the biggest college football game in the history of the state of Indiana, and I'm going to be in the state of Indiana for it. And I'll be drinking Labatt Blue Lights if they have them there with friends and living life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Okay, Emory. Indiana is getting 7 points at Notre Dame Friday night, 8 o'clock. The total is 51.
This game, I guess you could say, is a state divided. You know what I'm saying, with these 2 teams. But I like the fact that we get 2 really good quarterbacks. And no one improved their draft stock more so, in my opinion, than Riley Leonard. From Duke to the beginning part of the season at Notre Dame, where he was like, I don't know, man. He's just kind of like a runner. And then after the Northern Illinois loss, he has been lights out. He has been exactly what you expected him to be from start to finish. And he has kind of got the confidence, and now it has balanced out their offense. I just feel like Indiana, and I love Kursignetti, and I love what they've done, with the JMU transfers coming in and doing a good job. But Curtis Rourke also has played some great ball. Again, I said this before on the show, he's the number 1 CFL draft prospect, but now he has played himself into an NFL draft prospect, so the CFL is going to have to wait. I think this game will be close in the first quarter, but man, watching Notre Dame over the last month, it's hard to say that they can't cover this spread of 7 points. So I would lay these points with Notre Dame. The offensive line, the defensive line, how they are running the football, how they can control the tempo and the pace of the game. I like Notre Dame to win this one and cover easily.
All right, Emory's got Notre Dame laying the 7 against Indiana. I think you're probably right. I don't have a strong feeling on it. I really don't like laying 7. Like, if this was the Even Money Betting Podcast, I would just stay away. But basically the way we do it on this show is I tell Emory the game and he makes a pick on it. So he doesn't really have a chance to stay away. I would stay away. All right. What about the Saturday slate, Emory? We'll start with SMU at Penn State. Total is 54. Penn State is laying 8.5. And Emory, I want to make sure we get to all three of these games, but something needs to be said, okay? College football needs to fix this. Bo Prabula is from right down the road. Grew up a huge Penn State fan. Loves Penn State football. He's living his dream. However, the college football playoff is at the exact same time as the transfer portal. It seems like Drew Aller must be coming back to Penn State, you would assume, because Prabula on Sunday night announced he's going into the transfer portal and won't play for Penn State in the college football playoffs. This would be like if NFL free agency was the second week of January. This is just ludicrous. And I don't know what the answer is. And I'm not blaming anybody, certainly not blaming Bo Prabula, but we got to figure it out, and we got to figure it out fast.
Right, because he kind of, I mean, you mentioned it, but the story that came out was about Bo Prabula, but the lead that was buried was, man, Drew Aller may be coming back, which, you know, he had a chance to be a first-round pick in this year's draft, so he's probably going to.
Do you really think so? Do you really, like, I saw some ranking recently where they had him as the top prospect. That surprises me.
Yeah, that's a little bit too rich for me, because the mobility isn't there for today's game to be a high. If this was 1997, absolutely, right? Because that's what fit the mold of the quarterback. Not saying Drew Aller can't play, but he
can run better than you think.
He can, but he's more of the Daniel Jones runner as opposed to the twitched up runner. He's a straight line guy, right? He's not Josh Allen, you know, and so I think he's more Daniel Jones than he is, like, let's say a Vince Young or somebody like that, right? But yeah, I think what throws it off, because you can't blame Bo because you got to enroll in classes for January. You know what I'm saying? And so,
well, he's got to get his spot.
You got to get his
spot.
The
only thing I wonder about that, I saw where Dillingham from Arizona State said you can go in the portal, but you can still stay with us during the playoff. So I'm wondering if Franklin didn't give him that option, or if he wants to go visit schools. But whatever schools are interested in him, they need to know. Otherwise, they got to move on to somebody else. They need a quarterback. They need a starting quarterback.
Right. It's so tough, man. It's so tough. It puts the player in a bad spot, and it makes everybody look bad. The coaches that are recruiting him to tell him to jump in the portal, Franklin, if he told him you can't stay on the team, it just, all of it is bad. And I think that kind of distraction gives a little bit of SMU a little bit of fire to come into this ball game. I do like the over more than anything, and it's 54.5, so I'm going to take the over of SMU Penn State.
Over 54 for Emory, SMU Penn State. Well, that's what the Big Ten championship game was for sure. The thing that, if you don't follow it that close, the thing you need to know is Bo Prabula is not just Penn State's backup quarterback. He plays like 10 to 15 snaps a game. He's involved. They get him involved because he's a different runner than Aller. I'm sad for him because I actually thought he had a chance to start multiple years at Penn State. He gives off the craziest McSorley vibes of all time. He's basically the same guy. It's unbelievable. Number 9, not the biggest dude, runs well, tough. It's crazy that Penn State has a second McSorley, and that he's never going to get a chance to start now. He won the Wisconsin game for him. All right, Emory likes Penn State SMU to go over the 54. I'll be curious. I didn't check the weather yet. I just got back to Central PA, and there's snow on the ground and slush in the driveway. Good luck to SMU if that's what it's like. And it's Saturday.
A new kickoff, so it helps SMU out a little bit.
Yes. What about in more ways than one? Also, the students. I don't think the students get out this week. I don't know how many students are going to stay rather than going home for Christmas break. I don't know how many they're going to stay to go to the game. And noon is very different than at night. If SMU is playing Penn State at night, I would lay any amount of points with Penn State. Just a different environment. All right. What about Clemson? Clemson's getting 11 and a half against Texas. What? I mean, 11 and a half, Emory, against Quinn Ewers? Are you kidding me?
Bro, listen, if you watch both of these teams, and this was the eye test coming in, if you watch both of these teams over the last month, you think Clemson was the number 2 ranked team in the country and Texas was ranked 11th because Clemson has been playing some great ball. Texas is a very good team, worthy of being in the top 5, obviously, but man, I can't get past what I saw last. And that was Quinn Ewers just not having the added juice against Georgia that was without their starting quarterback, that you had them on the ropes, and he missed some crucial throws in regulation, let alone in overtime. And so for me, going off that, based off what I saw Clemson do last against SMU and what they did against Pitt and how Cade Klubnik has been playing and what he does in the run game, and Dabo Sweeney, and you get humble Dabo after a win. I think this all. I'm taking Clemson in the points. This could be the most intriguing game of the opening round because Clemson is a live upset dog in this game. But plus 11 and a half, give me all those points.
Totally agree. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Clemson wins the game.
Right.
So to be able to get the points too, I mean, I absolutely love that bet. I don't like it. I love it. I'm with Emory on Clemson plus the 11 and a half. What about Tennessee against Ohio State? I can't remember if I said that Emory's picks are presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So I'll say it again. Tennessee's getting 7.5 at the shoe. Boy, I can't remember the last time Ohio State had a night game. That's gonna be awesome. Ohio State have a night game against Tennessee.
And Tennessee playing north of the border, like north of the Mason-Dixon line, right? Like when the last time we saw that? But I think it's gonna be awesome. I think what Ohio State is gonna find out is Tennessee can run the ball. And I think because they can run the ball, we're going to get a tighter game. And Tennessee's defense is actually pretty doggone good. So, and if we're being completely honest, I think I can trust Nico Iamaleava more so than Will Howard in terms of throwing the football if it needs to be. So even though on paper Ohio State has a ton of talent, this is still an SEC team they're going up against in terms of point of attack play. They can match along the offensive line and defensive line, and they can run the football a lot tighter than people think. Give me Tennessee plus the points.
Yeah, I'm with you for all the reasons you just said. The only thing that gives me a little bit of hesitation, Emory, is Ohio State has had a lot of time to chew on that loss to Michigan, and you wonder the impact of that. It's funny, though, for those guys, if like for Army Navy, it wouldn't matter if they won the national championship. Like they still lost to their opponent. Like
Right.
I don't know how the Michigan guys feel about it. I guess in my mind, I feel like the one thing they can do to make up for it is if they won the Natty, is if they won the whole thing. It'd be like, great, good, congrats to you, Michigan. You beat us. We're national champs. We got rings and everything. Although the Michigan guys would say, yeah, we did that last year. That would be something. Michigan, Ohio State win the national championships back to back. All right, so Emory has Notre Dame laying the 7, Penn State SMU over 54, Clemson plus 11.5 is the one I really agree with, and then Tennessee plus the 7.5 against Ohio State for Emory. Some of these other bowls this week, we got Memphis, West Virginia, Western Kentucky, JMU, Cal, UNLV, Georgia Southern, Sam Houston, Ohio, Jacksonville State, and maybe the most notable one, Tulane against Florida. Emory, any of those jump out to you?
The Tulane, Florida, because of the whole transfer portal thing. You don't have Darian Minson no more for Tulane, who jumped in the portal after the AAC championship game. But you do get to see DJ Lagway for Florida, which is outstanding. He may be a Heisman finalist next year. And then the Ohio Jacksonville State game. We talked about this last week, Ross. This is why you got to have all the conference champions be in the postseason, because these two teams would have been in the playoffs, right? And so at the end of the day, we would have saw this game as a round one matchup. So I just wish we get to – I'm glad Cam Ward even came out and said, man, they need to be 16 and 24 teams in the college football playoff because, again, this is someone that's coming from Incarnate Word where he played in a 2014 playoff format.
Right. People were killing you last week. if everybody gets a trophy, then nobody gets a trophy. Really, like that's not how it works at all. You're not getting a trophy, you're getting a championship and an opportunity. And that's the way it is at every other level of college football. People don't even know that. They don't know that that's the normal. The FBS is abnormal. Check him out at FBall Game Plan. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. The keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.